Welcome back to the Real Estate Rat Pack Radio Show with Chris, Joe, and Rob. The crew is taking your calls, so dial in at 1-800-808-5548.
And welcome back to the Real Estate Rat Pack Show. You know, it always amazes me how much fun we have in the studio, and then secondly, how fast it ends up going.
That was the fastest 12 minutes I remember in a long time. And sitting next to me right now, and sitting next to Chris also, is David M. Young. I always make that distinction because he is the younger and very active in
the other David Young.
The other David Young.
Y'all are actually working. I'm in the corner with the ladies.
Yeah, well, I don't blame you. Not at all.
Joe's got the good seat in the studio.
We're switching seats next time. But David, you're very active in the Memorial. You're just telling me that you just took on a $3 million listing, and you are actually buying houses in the Memorial area that's right. We're not supposed to use the term flip. We're supposed to we're going to extensively renovate and ultimately sell it. But
flip suggests laminate floors. We're not doing that. We're doing quality remodels.
Okay.
But renovations, restorations.
Let's talk about what your experience in that market and, time on the market, what people are looking for, amenities. Why do people want to be in Memorial?
Sure.
Talk about that.
And, the process of buying these houses is tough because of what we were talking about before, and that's all the feeding frenzy that's happening, especially in the Memorial area. You've got so many people competing to be in that area because of schools, energy corridor, the rest of it, great value. So just buying the houses to be able to get in, I'm competing against what we talked about, HGTV viewers, right? So you've got all these people that, hey, I'm going to make $1 million today, and they get in the way. Builders are getting in my way. When we can finally find a house.
Quit beating around the bush, David.
When we can finally find a house that is the ugliest home in the neighborhood, that's the one we want, the one nobody else wants. And then we completely renovate it and put it back at the top of the market. I've got one of those houses right now that I'm going to be holding open today at 10934 St. Mary's Lane in the Rummel Creek area.
You want to repeat that address one more time?
10934 St. Mary's Lane.
And what time today?
At 12 to 3.
And what are you serving?
Water. Air conditioning.
Okay. Well, you said something about competing with the builders, because I have a very dear friend of mine, John Abercrombie, who builds in that, and he only builds maybe 2 to 3 houses a year, but he always builds them in the $3 million range. He's your competitor on that.
Because he'll buy that for lot value.
Yeah.
And he can outbid me on that because he's going to sell a $1.5 million house in that area versus the $600,000, $700,000 house I'm going to put back on the market.
Gotcha. So when you renovate something like this, what would you propose that price is going to be on that renovated property? I'm sure you got some number in mind. Make us an offer.
Yes, on every one of them. We go in. You've got to do all your math before you ever make an offer on these things. But yeah, you've got to go in with your numbers there. We'll go back into the top of the market, and right now in that particular area, that's about $250 a square foot.
About $250.
And what are you seeing people? Speaking of Memorial, you mentioned this at the very beginning. All this stuff. What are some of the things that are driving not only the success of Memorial, but right now the increase in building and flipping, for lack of a better word, and an increase of real estate? Let's go over some of the amenities that Memorial is offering. I've always liked to talk about that because sometimes we get stuck too much in the real estate side and forget about the lifestyle of what actually Memorial offers.
Well, first of all the jobs, energy corridor. I think right now, City Center, Town and Country, is really the epicenter of growth in Houston.
Oh, yeah.
All the way out to Katy and Highway 99 and past that, out to Fulshire. And you've got everybody working in the energy corridor, and now with I-10, easy to flow through on I-10 even at 5, 6 o'clock. Well, for the most part,
easier.
Let's say easier.
Wait till Monday.
So even if you're working downtown, you can come out to the Memorial area for the good schools and for the great investment. I think that's why Memorial historically has done so well. I'll tell you quickly a short story. My father in 1965 bought a house on a half-acre lot that was 2,800 square feet ranch-style house on Bryn Mawr Circle. He bought it for $37,500. 7 years later, in 1972, he sold it for $54,000. Nice profit. That lot sold a year and a half ago for $850,000. They tore it down and built a $3.5 million house.
Wow.
That's why you invest in the Memorial area.
What's pulling the people to a Memorial? Is it exclusivity, the size of the lots, Spring Branch schools?
All of the above.
All the above.
And you mentioned City Center. My office is right there in the City Center area. And let me tell you, it was amazing because I used to come to Houston and remember the old Town and Country days, right? Town and Country Mall was the place to be. And all of a sudden they put in that mixed mosh of freeways and highways and you couldn't get to it anymore. And now you go back over to City Center, and let me tell you, it is the cream of the cream. It's the top of the crop in reference to going out there, finding places to do. You've got great eateries. You've got drinkeries, for those who like to drink, by the way. But you have a little bit of everything to do right there. And guess what? It's all right there in that Memorial area. And one of the things that we're still seeing, as you mentioned, is all the amenities that not only are still continuing to grow in Memorial, But also the new school, for example, Frostwood Elementary, brand new school out there. They actually tore down and are building back up right now, be online here within the next year. I mean, you're seeing a lot of neat stuff that's going in Memorial. And as you mentioned, it's such a centralized area. I can tell you, I live out in Katy. And I work in Memorial, and I do a lot of business in Memorial. And it's interesting to see, as you mentioned, that whole corridor, the change that has taken place, the redevelopment that's taken place. What are you seeing in regards to some of the West Memorial side? Are you seeing that same exact type of growth that's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Our office is West Memorial. We're just west of Kirkwood on Memorial. And there's lots of growth there out along I-10. You go a little bit further west, you've got the hospitals, you've got lots of new office space being built for the oil companies there. You were talking about what is it that draws people to Memorial. When I was a kid and I grew up in Hunters Creek, remember we used to go ride our bikes and play outside, and you didn't wear a helmet on your bike. And you could just stay out until the sun went down. And you didn't have a cell phone.
Water hose.
Yeah. There was no pager. You just got home when you got home. I think that still happens, except they have cell phones now, in Memorial. The kids go out and they ride their bikes and they go down to Bobby's down the street, and then they come back home, and you don't have to worry about them. It's still safe. You've got village police. You've got just a real homogeneous area there that doesn't have a lot of commercial development.
But you bring up something. There are 6 Memorial villages. 2 are north of 10 and 4 south of 10. And that's what people often talk about, is that the good news and the bad news about the villages is they have local police enforcement. We know that you get by Kincaid, you don't do 35 miles an hour and things like that. So I think people are attracted to
the police will show up in 5 minutes, not 3 hours.
My old office on Gaylord was a speed trap, let me tell you.
Well, it's right next to the station right there.
Right, but you're right, though. And most people don't realize is the villages do consist of 6 different villages. They do have their independent PDs. They've got their own mayors, et cetera, et cetera. But it's also a very neat way they've set it up because it's still everyone. I have a lot of friends. I have a lot of family that live in the Memorial area. And what David got through mentioning, I think, is extremely interesting. Is it's still for all the openness, all these places that you see with all the fences and gated in. You don't have that. You have got a lot of space. I mean, children actually go out to their yards and play and run, for 500 feet and still be on their property line. Yeah. I mean, so you see a lot of that, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, let's talk about that because we always talk about Memorial Village acre, which in Piney Point's like 40,000 square foot, but they're not all that large. What's the typical lot size in the villages?
Half acre to an acre.
Half acre.
Typical. There are smaller ones. There's areas of Hunters Creek and Bunker Hill that have 10,000 square foot lots, but you've got exclusive streets like Timberwell that's got minimum 2.5 acres on each of those. The house at the end of that street is the high listing in Memorial at $15 million.
Well, the only thing I always enjoyed about Memorial is you go through there, unlike West University and things like that, very urbane. This very pastoral feeling because you have a lot of trees, you have ravines, you have vistas, you have the bayou. I mean, it feels good to go through there.
This is an area of town, correct me if I'm wrong, that still really has, when I live out in the Humble area. Humble has a lot of history, with Texaco and all that sort of thing. And something that when I moved from a little town out in the middle of nowhere, Texas, Columbus, that when I was in Humble, I said, despite the fact that it's surrounded by a lot of city, it still feels very small townish. And I think Memorial, correct me if I'm wrong, is one of those areas of town that still has this very older feel to it.
Sure. Well, you've got ditches instead of paved. Well, you do have sidewalks, but instead of having culverts underneath, you still have the ditches on lots of these streets, and they want it that way. So it's got a little bit more rural feel to it. You're 10 minutes from Galleria, from Memorial Park. Not very far from downtown. You can get to just about anything. But as soon as you get into Memorial, you're just more relaxed. I live inside the Loop, and when I was dropping off some brochures at the house I just listed on Habersham, 11510 Habersham, cheap plug.
Actually expensive plug.
Wow. Worked right in there.
And I dropped the flyers off and the brochures off at the house at night and turned on the gas lamps on the house, and then when I left, I just thought about how quiet, how dark it was. It was as if I was out in the country.
Well, when people first started moving out there, it was the country. People were going, "You're moving way out there." It was like you got a 1-story ranch. You're sitting on an acre, and you're far removed from the city. And of course, we didn't have the transportation system back then. And of course, then when the Galleria was established in 1960, and people started realizing, hey, we've got a city that's growing west.
Right.
And so then still now it's like you have to go out and try to find lots and reestablish, new construction and things like that. But there's still a lot of the old houses there.
What's amazing is how Houston has grown. I was visiting a lady, probably about 90, 95 years old, right behind the Duchenne area over where the school is over there. And her family, used to own all that property around Duchenne, everything. It was their farmhouse. And so you look at this, and she's lived there for 90 years. And so you look at where we stand today, and you drive by that area, you would never believe that 80 years ago, that was farmland. That was all farm. That was, she owned something like, 80, 90 acres or whatever it might have been at that time, owned everything in that area. And then slowly as they grew, they sold it off to family and friends, and that's sort of what been subdivided. But you look at it, and that's sort of the history of it, though. The history is it's been a very well-established, very neat area. It's been very safe, and traditionally it's been very family-oriented. The farming industry, as I tell everybody, has always been a very neat industry to look at because, it's the work ethic that you see, and you see that in Memorial. The individuals are living there, very high work ethic, very successful individuals, but also very safe, very family-oriented. The schools represent such.
And Dave, do we still have a lot of the old guard there, people that moved there in the 60s and they're still living there?
You do have a lot of that, but what you have even more is their kids. My generation has moved back. They've gone back there because it's such a wonderful place to be, to raise their families and then stay beyond. I'm looking for a house in the East Memorial area. I want to be close in, right? Still close to the park, close to Galleria, close to all that, but still in the Memorial area.
And what areas would that be?
East of Chimney Rock, before 610.
Okay.
Right.
You said that you're doing some renovation and investment properties. Are you still? It amazes me still, as hot as the market is, that we're finding investment opportunities. Is there any particular areas you've been having more success with, or?
Yeah. Well, why I'm focused on Memorial is because you can buy the older house that's about that a builder would tear down, come back and renovate it, and buy it at a low enough price. There's enough swing value in that market to then sell at the top end. You can't do this in every market. If I go out to Katy and I buy a house that was built in the 70s, I can't do much to that house and still have and still be able to sell it at the top end of that market.
Well, tell me what you're, when you go and say extensively renovating, tell me what you're doing to these houses.
Ripping out the electrical, the plumbing, putting in almost everything you see in this house, all the equipment. We'll put new roofs on. I mean, it's a complete renovation.
So do you take it to the studs typically? Or?
Basically take it to the studs.
And are you saying that people like you to keep it more in its original style, or try to renovate
Absolutely.
it to a modern thing?
The neighbors are so happy with us. They come and say, thank you for not tearing that down and putting up a McMansion, So they really like that, keeping the character of their neighborhood. And the people we buy it from, a lot of the time, it's the kids. And they remember growing up in the house. And so they're really glad to sell to us versus a builder who's going to tear it down.
That is awesome. We're coming up against a break right now. If you want to hear more from David and all of his shameless plugs of everything he's got going on in reference to real estate, stay tuned. We'll be right back.
A little bit of me and a whole lot of you. Add a dash of starlight and a dozen roses too. Then let it rise for 100 years or two. And that's a recipe for making love.